Emilio's just arrived, so I think we can start now. Thanks everybody for coming. I hope you've all had a good lunch. I did. My name's John Dixon. I'm the UK National Contact Point. I work for DEFRA. I'm chairing this session. It's a slightly different session from what I think the other ones are, in that we're going to hear 5 very short presentations on proposals for the maintenance and implementation work programme. When we've heard the presentations, and Michael, correct me if I'm wrong here, we're going to, you'll be invited to go into groups around those the presentations that you've heard and have a longer discussion, probably for about 30 minutes. And then after that, we'll come back together, and I think probably each group will nominate a rep to give a bit of feedback. Everybody okay, clear with that? If so, given that we're 2 minutes past now, we should start with Michael, please.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Michael Lutz. I work for the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. I'm quite excited about this new format and to see how it goes. So here's my pitch for a quick discussion in the group afterwards. The title is Making Inspire Technical Guidelines More Easy to Read and Maintain. Big task, maybe. This is what we have now, what the Inspire Technical Guidelines look like now. So we have about 50 or so of them. There's probably several hundreds, clearly probably more than 1,000 pages if you all put them together. They're PDF documents. And it's not, we keep hearing from people that it's not always easy to find what they're looking for and to understand, and it really scares first-time Inspire newbies off the task of implementing Inspire. We also have done a bit of work on that and basically taking some of the content in these technical guidelines mostly from the data specification, which make up most of the pages of these many hundreds of pages that we have, and we created online resources. You are able to see the data models that are there. We've built a tool called Find Your Scope. Who knows the Find Your Scope tool? Who has used it for something? Good. Okay, Robert's happy. Very good. We have an Inspire knowledge base pages for each of the Inspire themes where you can get access to the different resources. So we've done a bit of taking the content of these technical guidelines apart and providing it in more smaller byte chunks to be consumed. There's also the codeless registry, or the register in general. We have a GitHub repository with the abstract test suite. So these are all kind of things that we've already done. But it comes with a problem. So this is a little project that we've done where we've really tried to map out what is the production workflow for all these different resources that we have. And I'm not expecting you to really read and understand all of this, just to give you a bit of feeling of the complexity of what it means to keep all of these different resources consistent. And we are aware that in some cases the consistency is not fully there, but we're doing our best to do that. But it is really a complicated job to do. So what could it look like in the future? In this little project, we built a small prototype for one of the Inspire data specs for administrative units, where we basically built a kind of a modular structure. All the content is managed in an online repository. The goal was that it's really easy to edit, reuse, and discuss about some change requests. So if something needs to be changed, there should be just really one place where you make the change, and there's a possibility to also discuss about these things. Also, we wanted to be able to, on the click of a button, basically create different representation and different document versions. So basically a short guideline, a longer one, a more detailed one, different audiences, and so on. And basically just to really make the change once and propagate it to all the representations. If you're interested afterwards, there's also a demonstrator where we can have a look at that as well. So basically, we have the view of to provide different versions for different audiences. In this prototype, we created a long and a short version of the data specification, and basically to link to other resources that are already available, like the code lists and the abstract test suites. So here's what I would like to discuss with you. Is this really useful? Is this work adding any value? Should we be going further in this direction to try and create some more different representations? If so, what additional representations would you expect? Would you like to be created? What should be the readership? What audiences are we missing to address with the current technical guidelines? What actual features would you like to have in a system supporting these kind of different representations? And what implications would such a new approach have for the maintenance workflow? Would it make things easier? Would we need to put into practice some other workflows? And last but not least, is this something that's maybe not so useful for Inspire, or maybe it is, but it may be useful for other purposes, for other things that you're doing in your working lives? So that's what we would like to discuss and get some feedback on in the breakout group. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Michael. The next pitch is from, it's actually billed as being Jose Miguel Rubio. In fact, it's Christian Ansorge. Same topic.
Yes. Let's go here. Voila. When does the time start counting here?
30 seconds ago, yeah.
1 minute gone.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. My name is Christian Ansorge, and we prepared this presentation, this pitch together with my colleague Jose Rubio. We just decided I'm the fastest speaker, so I take it. The scope of that and what we hope then afterwards to discuss is the usage of WFS harvesting in the context of environmental reporting. So we have to discuss when is this useful, if it is useful, where do you see your benefits, and we have to define a business case because this is really important that we get a common agreement about it. Let's start it. When I was still in Austria working for the Environment Agency there, I was one of those youngsters who always stand up at the EA presentation and said, the EA should not, the EA should. So now being on the other side, I see that this is a little bit more complex feature. And so here we are talking about these two alternatives: to push data to ReportNet, or to use aka pull to reuse the web feature services provided by Inspire. And there are different opinions, and sometimes these different opinions are coming from the same person. It's just a little bit in the progress of getting more details in the discussion, and the opinion might change. So yes, we have web feature service Inspire, and they're legally demanded. So to be there by 2017 or 2020, but there's always a but. Environmental reporting is an operating system. So, and what you learned in IT, never touch the operating system, as long as you not have a really good reason for that. So now we would like to discuss more in detail what is the really good reason for that. So, and we are not saying it's black and white. So we say yes, but we would like to define with you when is a good case to do that. So, and what I would like to do is here, it's just giving you a little bit from a brainstorming, a little bit points I throw in, and I would like to get more of your views on that in the discussion. For example, is data relevant for other reportings as well? How large is the file? Gigabyte, or are we talking about a few kilobytes? How often is the reporting to be done? Every 30 minutes in real time, or every 6 years? How well is that area where the reporting is supposed to be implemented in Inspire? So from protected sites, which is pretty well established right now, to other teams which are more scarce. Is it reported also to other stakeholders, or is it just to the EA? Is there maybe also UN reporting, national reporting, regional reporting, international reporting on top of that, where you report the same data? So also something. How big is the public interest? So from very large to basin water air quality, where we have a high interest, to hardly any interest, like some regularity reporting on the implementation of some of the directives, like here Inspire reporting. Or how big is the share of Inspire on the overall reporting volume? So is it from 5% to 50%? So we know that the Inspire data specification don't cover the whole reporting requirements. Just a few points. And this is a usual excitement level. So we are starting with having big ideas, then we come to the reality, and then we see maybe it's not that easy and it's more complicated. So we would like to learn more about your expectations on it. So do you think that you will save costs? I personally think the cost savings are not the most important point. Is it gaining political value or visibility? That's something which is very important, the reuse of Inspire. So is it about making environmental data more broadly available? Definitely yes. Do you see other opportunities why some of you want to have WFS reporting or not? And we would like to know about it. So we would like to bring in the next year this discussion on a broader level with the EEA and with IONET, and this is just to get some first ideas. So that's it.
Okay. Thanks, Christian. Our next pitch is from Edwin Wisse on code lists, I believe.
There I am. Hi, my name is Edwin Wisse. I'm, contrary to what the program says, I'm not from the Federal Institute for Geoinformation and Environmental Things. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm from the Informatiehuis Water. We're a collaboration between all the water management bodies in the Netherlands. I'm going to tell you about something about code lists. It's also not part of the maintenance and integration working program. So as we say in Holland, I'm a bit of the strange duck in the pond here. But I hope to be interested you in this subject. So, well, what is the problem? Well, we've got well-established information models, which give the relations between all the information units. The grammar, basically, of the semantic web is very well established. But you also need a vocabulary to speak a language. And much of the meaning from the information which we're exchanging, the water information, is in the code lists. And while Inspire has established a number of very useful code lists, not all of the information is available in the code lists. So for reporting to the EA, our users, the users at the different water management authorities, they have to refer to a lot of different code lists. And partly of the code lists overlap. Some are maintained on different levels than other code lists. So they experience this as a problem. In the Netherlands, we've got a situation where we had to deal with very diverse water management authorities. There are regional water management authorities which are not in the hierarchy of the ministry. The ministry has nothing to say about them. There's the ministry for the national issues, and there's the provinces. So to make all these able to be able to combine their information, we've established an information standard which consists both of an information model and of a set of code lists, all encompassing code lists, especially for the water domain. And we maintain a pretty strict yearly procedure for maintaining this model and this information model and the code lists. Once a year we update it. We have this procedure where users file change requests. They are being discussed within expert groups, thematic expert groups, technical expert groups, and then once a year they're being raised to the standard level. And we think that this practice is actually, well, it could serve as a best practice for Europe, we think. So I hope to be speaking later with some of you about and go more into what ACO is about, our information standard. I'm curious to hear about the experiences in your country, whether we need harmonized code lists at all or not, because, you know, I've been told that with linked data, everything is going to be different. And on the European level, what is the governance? Who could be responsible if we decide to go on with this idea? And then since I've got 1 more minute, I'm going to throw in 1 more slide, because I'd like to stress that this morning Michael Lutz told us something about registry and the registry of registries. And that's a great first step in order to bind the registries, the code lists together. But mainly what we do is about harmonization, to make sure that everybody knows that we talk about the different terms. So actually the discussion in all those working groups is basically semantic. Does it mean what we all agree on, what it means? So, well, that concludes my 5 minutes. I hope to be talking to you about this later.
Thanks, Edwin. Our next pitch is from Lorena Hernandez.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Lorena Hernandez Quiroz. I work as an external consultant for the Joint Research Center, and my speed presentation is on designing or not a new functionality to help fill in the Inspire technical gaps. As you know, the Inspire implementation is ongoing already for 10 years, and we have achieved some deadlines, but it hasn't always been easy for implementers to do it, and it's not still the easiest thing. They often have to face technical gaps that can come in the form of bugs or missing features. And this is very well known by the thematic clusters facilitators that are in the last months collecting long spreadsheets of known issues regarding two of the probably most used tools in the Inspire implementation, as your server and degree. But they can come also in form of missing resources. Maybe there are no skills enough, or there's no money to, and that has an impact on the implementation as well. And of course, they could be even missing software that they do not support at all any of the Inspire tasks. And this is exactly what Arena has been trying to do in the under the former interoperability program of the European Commission called ISA, and it's been funding and developing open and reusable components, and this is how the registry appears and also other softwares. But however, there's still many missing, there are still many technical gaps, and the European Commission cannot intervene in all of them. So we need to find a way of proceed collaboratively to make face to it. And already crowdsourcing has appeared several times as an option to go ahead, but this is not so far an option because it has some issues regarding transparency for the government. So the real question of my presentation is to know if there should be a GRC, if the GRC should broker the needs between data providers and solution providers or not at all. So far, data providers, if they find a bug or they simply want to make their life easier and avoid making long workarounds, they speak directly to the solution providers, and probably they are even duplicating the request and even paying for the more or less the same feature. So should we leave it like that, or should we create a space in the GRC website somehow where to broker this need, where to gather the interest, and maybe where the member states could understand that other has intention in paying for a feature and maybe co-funding. So if you think that this is the way, I would like to begin to collect some requirements to maybe add it to the Inspire website. The initial idea would be to reuse the Inspire in Practice website. It's a collaborative platform where there is a tool repository collecting all the tools that are relevant for the Inspire implementation tasks. And some suggestions, I've put them there for discussion, but maybe they are not the good ones. And I would like to know as well how should be the governance, if we should keep it open, close maybe through the thematic facilitators. And one last thing, we should avoid creating again issue trackers or discussion forums, because they are the proper places for that. We should only be signposting to them. So if you think that this is relevant for Inspire, I would like to discuss with you what we've seen. First, if you have faced these difficulties and how you've dealt with them. If you think that the GRC should have a role here, and if so, which requirements do you think should be taken in consideration?
Thanks, Lorena.
Thank you.
next speaker, or our next picture is Clemens. If you're looking at the book, Clemens is not actually included, but he's included on the website, so he's not an interloper.
Yeah, if you turn up on the speed presentation session Friday at 9 a.m. and expect me there, I'm not there. I'm here today now because of a scheduling conflict on Friday, so I was invited to this session as a replacement. What my pitch is about the topic of Inspire and the relationship to RDF, and some work that we've been doing also as part of an ARENA project together with PwC for the Joint Research Center. So the context is that as part of that work, JRC was based on the observation that RDF is frequently used in e-government and open data communities. So, and part of the questions of ISA and ISA Square now is on how we can get location information more into the wider e-government. One of the questions is, would it help to also have rules on how to provide Inspire data in RDF? Would that help getting the data more easily integrated in those applications, those domains? How can that support the e-government service? So that's the kind of a scope of the question. This is not about replacing anything that exists. This is an experimentation about would that be another option that could help for certain cases. What I'm reporting is about a specific technical analysis. There is more about that Lorena will present on Friday in the Inspire Data session at 9:15. So there were 2 pilot projects that were looking into that, etc. And our work was really supporting that. Our work was related to what do we need to do on a specification side in Inspire to support this kind of requirement or these activities. And the answer is basically we did 2 things. One is, of course, what is needed if we want to do that consistently is that we have a common way in which Inspire data that is mandated in the legal text as represented as RDF. So basically the first goal is that we have common vocabularies, RDF vocabularies, that represent these spatial object types and their properties. So what we did is we derived them according to well-defined rules from basically the Inspire application schemas and represent them as RDF schema and a little bit of OWL, as you can see. What we did is we did that for a few themes that were used by the pilots to test and learn, and of course, if that's is useful, then it would need to be done for other, also more challenging themes than we did. The other thing that we were working on is basically to meet the legal requirements. This require guidelines, because in the interoperability implementing rule, there is an article that basically says if you come up with a new encoding, you need to specify. That's perfectly fine. So any of these simplified encodings, etc., that we were talking about, that's perfectly in line with the implementing rule. But there's a requirement that says you have to specify how the conceptual schema maps into that encoding. And to document that, we created the guidelines document, basically in ISO 19118 encoding rule. And there is a draft available that's public for a year and has evolved based on feedback, and it's ready for stakeholder review. It has 2 key chapters. One is about how we convert schemas. That's actually the most part. How do we convert the application schemas to RDF schemas? And the second one, that's a smaller one, is if you encode the data, many of the questions are covered by the schema part, but there are other parts like identifiers. How do we deal with real-world things versus digital representations, details on encoding, geometry, etc., where we need additional rules for interoperability. So everything is documented on GitHub. You have the links here in the presentations that you will find also on the website. We got feedback from the pilots, but also from the wider community, from people not involved in this, and it's online, but we need more experience and more review of it. And also there are a number of open issues, and you're welcome to raise more. The questions that I would like to discuss, and also that JRC is mostly interested in, is getting, is this valuable? Should there be more work on that? Also, where is the value? Where would you see the values? And when we think about additional encodings, optional encodings, is that one of the encodings that we should focus on, or is it other work rather? And if you have experience yourself with Inspire and RDF that you can share, that would be welcome too. Or if you have experience with challenges, or if you have concerns, that would be of interest as well. And if you even already had a look at the guidelines, if you have any feedback on that, that would of course be great as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Clemens. I think normally at this point I'd ask if anybody's got any questions for clarification, but given that we don't have that much time, I think if we just move to a show of hands for people who are interested in the different pitches. So who would be interested in joining Michael on a discussion on technical guidance? Who would like to talk with Christian about environmental reporting via download? Okay, much more popular session, that one.
Well, it's a Dutch section.
Who's interested in talking with Edwin about code lists? Okay, who would want to join with Lorena and talk about technical gaps? And last one on RDF with Clemens.
What do all the other people want to do?
Yeah. So who hasn't put their hand up yet? I might need a bit of help here, Michael. What do you suggest?
What we'll just do, I think we'll just, the speakers can go maybe in 4 different corners of the room, and somebody go outside.
Sorry to worry, but as we had the most voices, I will take that corner.
Here's the microphone.
No, if I could ask, if you could come back,
I'm gonna go in that corner.
if you could be back by 2 to 3, strictly, because I think if we just have 5-minute, strict 5-minute feedback and then 5-minute questions just at the end, Joe. Yeah. Sorry? 5 to 3, 2:55.
Come around, just grab a chair.
Yours is easier to remember.
Please, Michael, yeah. Whatever you like. You don't have to unplug it. There doesn't seem to be a switch. I'll go and tell the guy to turn it off. There is a tech. I'll go and tell it to turn. Okay.
It's off now. No? Okay.
Want to switch it off?
Yeah? But that
people
was-
look over it and say, okay, this is too complicated.
That was a bit of our idea of why we said, okay, yeah, and I invite you all to look at the prototype that I put the link in the slide, get up and send us some additional feedback that you have. The idea was to start really when you go to the technical guidelines, to start with the short version. So you give people the short version, basically only has the theme specific content, anything they really need to know to understand the theme. And if you really want to know about the thing that is common across the themes, or that comes from the general conceptual model, everything that's gray in the PDF now, you put that somewhere else. Because I mean, if you once read it, then you know it, and then you don't need to, or maybe you look it up for reference, but basically to only show the stuff that is really new for a given theme, and to really start with that kind of short condensed version that could then also be more easily translated. And only give people the option, say, if you want the extended version, you have a link here and you get the longer version. And that could be the idea then to say, okay, maybe the version for managers doesn't even show doesn't go to all the UML or whatever levels. It basically consists of a summary of the theme and maybe some of the use cases, and that's it. And so this is basically what roughly it is about. This is what you can use it for.
What did you use it for? This is very important because they many times they don't understand the power of the SDI.
Yeah.
So if they know and they say, okay, I'm going to give you my data, but what I'm going to get, this is Europe. No, sometimes it happens. So if they understand that all the benefits that they are going to obtain are a little bit deeper, I think that we are going to have very good results.
Okay, good. So maybe just in summary, I'm quite glad for all the feedback. What is interesting for me is that many of the things that you're suggesting are already there somewhere in the Inspire space. So good practice examples. We have it on the thematic clusters and the Inspire practice platform. Graphical representation videos, we have it. And I can show you some of the examples that we've created.
I know the videos, the Inspire
There's the
videos.
videos, and there's also some more graphical material,
Yes,
kind
I
of
know.
graphics and so on.
You can send it.
No, but there is that. We've been, so for me, it's more the question of really promoting it more and bringing it really in one place. And I think the discussion that we started off with is really interesting, is to say it should be all somehow in the document. So all the discussions on changes and tracking changes should be directly accessible through the document, so that actually people don't have to go off to different places and try and find it, but it should be direct.
When I hover over that bit with text, I would like to see either a link to everything I need to download and the correct version
Yeah.
for the XSD, instead of going into the schema repository and you're left with a zip file, a version 3, a version 4. Which one do you download? Yes, you'll go for the higher number.
Yeah.
But
But why?
if I'm downloading, I go for a zip file over an XSD. And the XSD is a different version.
Yeah.
Just one version, something simple for users like me that haven't time to look around places or too stupid. And it's just go in.
But you're thinking of, we
Down
have,
there, yes.
well, you have the theme page, and basically gives you all the resources that you have for the.
My hope is the battery allows me, yeah.
Okay. So you're saying it should be more prescriptive and saying the latest.
There's XSD.
Yeah.
It puts you into the repository.
It goes you to the latest version.
I don't want to see that. I just want to go and
I download everything that I want.
the XSD as
The
a
latest
zip file.
version.
Okay.
The latest version.
And I think that's a message that's not conveyed. It's a living standard. People expect it to be static. They looked at it 3 years ago, they haven't had time, they go back to the same paperwork and start again with a 3-year-old standard. They're not aware that it evolved,
Everything's sitting in a
especially not in the local administration level.
That's a good point. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Well, thank you.
Thank you. I will see you later on.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Because it's thank you.
I'm going to go in reverse order, so you'll be on that, so you get a bit of time to.
No, it's okay.
How about Kieran? So I think everybody's back in now, and just for novelty, I'm going to go in reverse order for feedback. So first up will be Clemens talking about RDF. So Clemens, if you just give us a reminder of some of the questions that you were trying to answer.
Okay, I will. So yeah,
it's strictly 5 minutes as well. I haven't started the clock yet.
My summary is probably the most incoherent since I don't have time to prepare it, unlike the others. So the questions basically that we exclusively focused on is the question, is it valuable to explore Inspire and RDF? Where's the value in also in comparison with other work? And basically we had representations from several countries, UK, Spain, Poland, Denmark, and the Netherlands. And basically the feedback was that all the countries are to some extent have experimented with it or are working with linked data and RDF in different contexts. Interesting in some cases, in particular where that started some time ago, that was reduced or given up for now because the demand wasn't that strong, and in some cases it's also that the focus is less on the RDF where things pick up, but more the persistent identifiers for the resources that people are interested in, and in some cases also other formats were more interesting because they're easier to handle, like CSV was mentioned. But we also, in other cases, it's also the recognition that things are changing and there are applications that not just in prototypes but make practical use, relevant use out of these technologies are also appearing. And I think it's one of my conclusions is, I think in order to pursue these kind of things on an Inspire level further, it would be good to get a better idea of what the use cases where this is important for Inspire for cross-border applications would be where there is actually a business benefit for people in Inspire and users to actually do that. One of the things that I think we all agreed where this clearly has more immediate values is when we also go to the definitions. So code lists, that's not basically the data, but that's more stable definitions. And there it's also easier to actually manage the different, for example, if a member state does extensions to a code list, another member state does other extensions, we can use the technologies that come with it to actually make relationships between the extensions from different countries, so that people might use that when they analyze the data from different countries, so they can relate the feature from one country to another, even if different code lists or code list extensions were used. That would be a more immediate benefit, and also something that relates to the other presentation that we had on code lists earlier. I think these were the main points that we had. Perhaps the other thing to do it. So to summarize, beside the code list recommendation, we see that the countries are doing it, and we just had a few from a few member states there, and I think it would be good to actually ask more broadly for input from the member states on these topics, so that a better decision could be made. And the final comment that we also had is that in Poland the geographic names are published and they're also indexed by search engines. So if you search for village names in their data set that's published that way shows up very high in the Google search ranking. So there is some work that's potentially also worth to investigate in. Okay, that's it.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Does anybody have any questions? So we can take
or
a
any
couple of
corrections
questions
or additions.
Yeah, or comments or anything anybody wants to say.
Did anybody
Michael.
mention?
Oh, go on, Michael.
Did anybody mention any good example use cases that they think might be relevant?
Well, I think there were examples, not really use case. We didn't have any use cases. There were examples mentioned of good applications making use of that technology, whether semantics. So I think you mentioned the Museo del Prado in Madrid. But my comment there is that's probably more a curated data set where you can control that, and that's a slightly different setting than in Inspiro. So I think that's why a cross-border use case where you can actually make use of the benefits that application has is also demonstrated, that it also applies to Inspire. I think that would help a lot. But if anyone has any application or use case that would help here, then please feel free to come to me or Michael also later.
Okay, thanks a lot, Clemens. Next, if I can invite Lorena to come and give a feedback. I have to say, Lorena, despite on the face of it having one of the least popular topics to talk about, ended up having one of the biggest groups. So well done for that.
Okay, yes. So since there was no one interested in the room, apparently we went hunting people outside, and we went. No, and it was very interesting because actually it was the audience that we needed. They were mostly solution providers. And to the question on if JRC should broker the needs of both solution providers and data providers, this is not. They said that yes, that would be helpful, but we should study first how others did, if there were some successful stories to implement this feature. And I invite you to help me because I couldn't do really the conclusions. I just grabbed some ideas. And then on the governance, and they think that it shouldn't be open to all. It should be facilitated by the thematic facilitators in that case, because they would be the ones who would be able to translate, let's say, the issues from the implementers to the language of the solution providers, to say it somehow. And they find that it should be a place where to report the issues, and then regarding the co-funding feature, they're not so convinced in general. They think it's a tricky question, so we should maybe discuss it more. And I know that I have left a lot of things, so maybe if you want to help me with a sentence on your conclusions.
Sorry, before you start, Wilner, could we have the microphone, please? Thank you. I'll just get your mic up.
Again, I'm Simone Gianecchini. I'm one of the founders of GeoSolutions. So I guess I can answer mainly for GeoServer, although we work a little bit for GeoNetwork. There is other representatives for GeoNetwork. What to say? Well, it's for sure useful if you have this feedback posted somewhere. It's also, as I said, matter of expectations. You talked about solution provider needs and users needs. I would say let's talk about users needs, because our needs are mostly money and the funding. I just said so. I mean, for me, it would be easy to tell you how to broker this thing from our perspective. Anyway. it's good to have a place where you can exchange information, and let's say that the difficult thing would be most of these projects are open source, as I tried to explain. So they're really real open source, not like a version with some less feature or something proprietary that we ask you a license for, which is not a criticism, it's the way it is. So most of the work is done by developers, and they will be very, let's say, allergic to use tools that are outside their community. So what I can say that us as managers of them, we can try to help and link the two information together. In terms of putting estimates and prices there, I would probably not do it, but we can try to estimate, I don't know, ballpark in terms of, I need to think about it. I mean, days, which doesn't mean anything, but it gives you an indication if you already work with some of us, or I don't know. The funding thing is a little bit tricky. For sure, it would be difficult for us to try and put together, or let's say, make different organizations agree on funding the same work. We did it in the past. It's better if this comes from the other side of the fence. Because for a company, and we are usually relatively small, it can be challenging, especially if organizations from different countries are involved, where difficult means almost impossible when different countries are involved. So yeah, I think it's useful, and what we can promise is actually to give more information back and trying to use some of our time in providing better information and better documentation.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. That's almost 5 minutes. Is there anything else to say? No, okay. Are there any questions for Lorena or for her group on the technical gaps and how to plug them? Okay, right. Thanks a lot, Lorena. If Edwin could have found anybody to talk about code lists, it would have been Edwin now, unfortunately. It's not Edwin. So next up is, it was Christian's group, but is it Jose? Jose, you're going to do it, yeah. Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot. I didn't have time to prepare properly for the conclusions, but I will do my best. I take a few notes about. We had a very interesting discussion about the potential of the use of download services in the context of environmental reporting. This discussion between this push versus pull paradigm. This discussion, I mean, we framed it before we started talking about the context, in the context that we are in the European Environmental Agency, which I'm working together with Christian, because we are now next year going to launch a first pilot study about the next generation of ReportNet, the system, as you know, that the EA uses together with member states and the Commission in order to upload the reporting information linked to the environmental obligations. So we wanted to trigger a discussion together with the colleagues here about how do they see, what do they expect from reporting via download services, what are the reasons or the business cases for the use of that, taking into account the complexity that some countries found versus the push from other countries to the agency in order to implement and pilot at least this approach. We want to have a detailed discussion about that. So we had a nice audience, colleagues from the Netherlands, from Sweden, from Portugal, and actually I think virtually everyone in the group was heavily in favor about the use of download services in environmental reporting. They see as a way to move from more traditional reporting workflows to a more digital flow of data to encourage then the use by everyone, not just the EU institutions, but the public of this information. And also something which I think for us is particularly relevant and important is this important change of paradigm from punctual periodical reporting, like every 6 years, to a continuous reporting. That's what download services can facilitate, and I think this result in an improvement of how we know what we know about the state of our environment. This is this incredible big importance for us to evaluate and assess what is the state of environment in Europe. Also, there was some voices in favor of this, the use of download services because of the efficiency. Automatizing these processes is something that will save a lot of costs in the environmental agencies, because nowadays there are many people working in submitting and creating all the reporting data sets and uploading into ReportNet and so on. So using services will facilitate this process and also create more transparency in the process. No? So the use of APIs, this is something that everyone was heavily in favor. What else we were discussing? Especially the Netherlands was very much in favor, and I think everyone agreed as well about the need to have only one mechanism to, if we have the same data set that we have to report in different reporting obligations, to report it once, to use, not to have to report several times the same data in different time periods, just to do it once and to use it in different reporting obligations. You know, this will of course save time, save resources. We were also speaking about potential formats and potential interfaces to in the context of download services for reporting. I don't think there was a particular view on that. I think what they want is just to agree on a specific interface and specific format, which will then depend on actually the data that we have to report. It's not the same maybe in the context of marine reporting versus nature reporting. So this will depend also on the kind of data. I mean, if these are very big files, maybe we need to use some interface on some standards rather than others. But I don't think this is a particular issue. It's more about agreeing on a specific format and a specific standard. Also, there was another comment which I think we have to pay particular attention in the agency as well, which is how, I mean, we have been in the agency together with the environment with the drafting of this concept note about the future of e-reporting and the link to Inspire. And there if you've come to our workshop on Monday, you will have heard about it. We explain about this different typology of data that we have in reporting, data type 1, which is the geospatial data, data 2, which is more like attributes, and then it's the last but not least important in reporting, which is all the textual information that we have, what member states have to report. So I think we have paid attention to this connection between data 1 and type 2. We have to think about also how to link all this with plans.
That's 5 minutes.
Yeah.
That's 5 minutes. So
and I think that's all. So
great, perfect timing.
I finished.
Perfect
Sorry.
Timing. Does anybody have any questions for Jose? Any comments to make that came out of that? Sorry, could you just wait? Will you bring the microphone to you, and then we can hear what you're saying. Thanks.
My question is if there were some discussions on quality control of the results of these services, because now for e-reporting, I think there is a whole structure of. Yeah,
indeed, this is one of the questions that we have to see within the context of the pilot study that we'll launch next year on the ReportNet 3.0, where we will investigate the use of services, which is one of the elements that we should consider, is especially the quality control of the processes, because this will mean revamping the whole way we work currently at the agency. So this is something that we have to think about it. I don't know if Christian has a particular idea on that, but this is actually one element we have to investigate. Yeah.
So two more questions. Ugo and Michael, did you have a question? Did I say that? Yeah. So Ugo first, and then.
No, I heard you say we have 3 types of data. Type 3, textual, important, plans, programs, etc. Type 1, spatial data.
Yeah.
And type 2, attribute data.
Yeah.
Does that mean that attribute data is not spatial data? Or?
Well, I was too quick in explaining. I mean, I think we agree that type 1 is just spatial data with attributes which are related to this geospatial data, and then attributes, information linked, which can be linked to a certain position, like observations and so on, which are not covered necessarily by the inspired data models. This could be also this could be considered as type 2, which is not within what we see in the data model, but still are observations of emissions, information, I mean, any kind of, and then this type 3 is more related to plans, management plans, and so on.
We use the inspired data models as the natural distinction between what we call geospatial data. Geospatial data, from our point of view, is more than just...
For the record. For the record.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that I personally think that geospatial data geospatial data in the context of this data typology is data which is covered by the inspired data specification, and geospatial data is more than just a coordinate, and I think that we agree.
Yeah.
You want to hear more from me now?
I think we should probably move on, Christian. Michael, did you have a question?
Well, no, I think it was going more in the direction that was asked earlier, whether you had actually some environmental reporters in the group, because usually they have different views than the Inspire people on whether or not these download services should be used. Yes. One of the reasons is the quality control, but there may be others. Sometimes maybe you don't want all your real-time information about air quality and whatever to be disclosed directly to the citizens. I don't know.
Christian.
We had environmental reporters, and this is one of the. This is a valid point. Some of the data which reported right now to us is disclosed, or only for internal use, and there we would need to find solutions for that. So right now, to generalize, we're speaking about data which is public, so environmental data which is public, which is available to the public.
Okay. All right, thanks. We'll have to leave that there.
Okay.
Thanks, Jose.
Okay. Really quite an interesting discussion, and I'm quite happy to see that most people were quite intrigued by the questions and the idea to come up with different ways of presenting especially the inspired data specifications to the wider stakeholder community. We got some interesting examples similar to what we proposed or presented. One from Dirk from North Rhine-Westphalia, where they have a system, kind of a social media platform where they basically interact with the people going out in the field and collect data according to some mapping guidelines that they've developed, and they provide feedback basically through this platform on the guidelines and what works and what doesn't work and where things maybe need to be changed. So that was one interesting example. The other one came from Kieran from his work for British Standards Institute, where they have the notion of living standards, where basically you have the published standard, which is the official one, but then you have also some ways of interacting with the community where you can discuss bugs, things that need to be changed, code snippets that are wrong or outdated and should be changed, and that can go together with the standard, and people can look at that and see what the discussions are ongoing about things that may need to be changed. You still have the official standard, but that goes together with this discussion, and then potentially from that that could bring things back into the next update of the standard. So from these discussions, we said, okay, we already well, that was one thing. Then the other thing was some concrete suggestions for what we could do to make the technical guidelines more easy to read. We also discussed a bit about different kind of representations that we could have. Different audiences could be the citizens, general students, general information, why Inspire is useful and what you can do with it. Then the deciders, the people that actually make decisions about whether something should be funded or money should be given to somebody or not, managers. And then the technicians, at least at these three levels, and they may require different things to be included in these texts. We also mentioned that there's an issue about language, both in terms of how to write things, but also natural language. So some things should probably be translated to other languages than English as well. But having the possibility of having maybe shorter documents or really snippets with executed summaries or something like that, that would reduce the number of things or text that would need to be translated into other languages. I guess that we then came to the point that basically the one other suggestion was to use more graphics, more graphical, easily accessible elements, as well as good examples, links to good examples that would showcase the how things could be implemented well. Now, but basically that all led to, for me, to conclude that we already have most of these elements in the Inspire knowledge base. We have a lot of them on the thematic clusters. We have the Inspire and Practice platform that is basically collecting good examples. We have the discussion forums where people can report bugs. We are now starting also to collect the change requests in one place where people can look them up. But I think the one thing that people felt, and I think that's an interesting thing for us to think about, is that it would be good to keep these things together with the documents. So rather than having the documents in one place and the thematic clusters or the discussions about the changes and the issues yet still under the same hood but still in another place, still means that people need to be looking in two places. So I think the feeling was it would be good to have, when you read the document directly, a link or a table or a list that says, okay, here, by the way, on this topic, there is a discussion here on the thematic clusters, and the current status of the discussion is this, and this has been already reported to the MIG, and it will be fixed in the next release, and so on. But rather than having it in a different place, to have it directly in the document. I think that was largely it. There was some more suggestions that we should try and see if we can get some more direct interactions with our readers, let's say, with the people that are actually implementing services and data sets based on these specifications. And if there is a change, to basically send an email out to all of them and saying, look, by the way, we have changed the specs, or here you might want to update this and that. We didn't really get to the point on how that could be done in practice, but that was something that's saying, look, really go out and to get a better, closer relationship to our users.
And Michael, I have to stop you there. That's 5 minutes.
I think that's basically it.
Okay.
I just want to invite everybody in the group that would like to continue this discussion, just to drop me an email, so I will maybe get back to you with some further follow-up on this. Maybe I could go for the other groups as well, I guess, to contact your speaker or your facilitator to continue the discussion.
Okay, so quick follow-up questions to Michael by email, please. Before we go, can I just ask, for a show of hands, I mean, did people enjoy this kind of presentation? Yeah. Other question, would you prefer to see more of sessions like this at a conference? Yes. Yeah, I mean, that's about 50-50 split, 52, 52, 53. Yeah. It's just not quite a referendum. Yeah. Yeah. So that's a done deal then. Yeah. Right, well, thanks very much, everybody. Also, can I just say thank you to Wilne, who was doing the honours with the microphone today. She's still in the room, but oh no, you are. Yeah, thanks, Wilne.